Well, good afternoon. It's certainly a pleasure for me to be back at MCI. I've had the pleasure of attending a number of the Easter plays and the holiday plays, and I'm not one bit surprised that TEDx is here at MCI. So thank you for doing this, and thank you for inviting me to share a few of my thoughts with you. Some of you had I don't know if it's a benefit or not, of hearing what I believe about the world and what it has to offer over many, many years. But I have a different one I want to maybe impart to you today just a little bit. So we know that this is about a life worth living. And when I heard the title of this event, that is what really sparked my interest in the topic that I want to talk just a little bit to you about today. So the title of the talk is the impact of respect and manners on the administration of justice. And this came about when I was lecturing at a big university not too far from here last year. It was a 3-hour class, and I had filled about 2 hours with all the kind of stuff that you would expect to talk about in a criminology class. We got toward the end of the discussion. Some very bright student in the back of the class raised her hand and says, Dr. Wilkinson, what is the answer to all that you've just talked about? How do we reduce crime? How do we make sure that the recidivism rate is lowered? How do we make sure that we create a better society by not having crimes committed, persons victimized, and society having to pay for it? And so I pondered about that quite a bit. And I knew the answers that they were probably wanting me to talk about. And I had been thinking about this one subject for quite a while, and I said, okay, I'm going to do this now. I'm going to come out of the closet with it. So, but I knew they wanted me to talk to them about drugs, about how to get a job. These are all answers to reentry, to not coming back to prison, having good family relations, getting an education, all the kind of things that you're hearing about today, not committing crimes, and being a healthy person. And so I said, no, I'm not even going to talk about any of those, because you already know that these are important. So let me talk to you about something that might be just a little bit different. And I said the answer, in many respects, to me is this: manners. If people were more mannerly, more respectful, then I think we wouldn't even be put in a position in the first place that crime would be a possibility, that bad behavior would be a possibility. So, of course, the audience was a little bit perplexed, by this, so I just talked about it a little bit more. How many of you have had this said to you? Mind your manners. Usually it's your mother or grandmother or somebody like that. Now, when my mother said it, however, this is what she really meant. Mind your manners or else. It wasn't an option that we had. When she said that, that was kind of a code word that, okay, don't do it anymore. And it wasn't even something my father contemplated saying. All he had to do was to look at you a certain way, and we knew exactly what he meant. I was at a charter school not long ago, and I saw these words posted on the door of one of the classrooms. And so, being the observant person that I am, I asked the administrator, well, is this something that's a normal course of your school? And they said, absolutely. We do not keep kids here if they don't understand the dynamics of these 5 words. And that intrigued me an awful lot as I began my tour of this charter school. So as I went, and this isn't from the charter school, this is just something I stole from the web. the kids in the classroom, the teacher calls on a student. You raise your hand, just like we always do. The teacher calls on the student, and the student says, "Thank you, Mrs. Jones, for calling on me." It's not just blurting out the answer. The person actually had to thank the teacher for calling on her, and then the teacher says, "You're welcome." So very early on, very subliminal in the process of this educational process at this particular charter school, they understand the dynamics of being mannerly, of being even professional, in a way that will guide them for the rest of their lives. Now, when we talk about manners, people generally think of table manners. This is from China. I think that's an octopus or something, and it's just meant to say that we can be more dignified in the way we do. Manners isn't just about which table fork to use or putting your elbows on the table while you're eating or closing your mouth while you're chewing your food. It's a lot more than that. It's a lifestyle, and certainly it's important as we lead our lives. I got this up here because I read an article recently about how people don't dress well when they're going into job interviews. You wouldn't want to dress like this. You want to dress appropriately for the event. Now, these aren't pictures from somebody who went to a job interview. I stole these too, but I wanted to exaggerate it. I wanted to exaggerate, the fact that, we can be more dignified about what we do. It's embarrassing. It almost shows disrespect. When you go to a job interview and the employer is wanting to ask about some very critical questions to determine whether or not to hire a person, when you're totally distracted by behavior that should be different. Good manners are the main ingredients of good etiquette. And I'm going to talk just a little bit about etiquette, because etiquette kind of is the main ingredient here. Etiquette is a code of behavior that enables us to show courtesy and civility to others. And I highlighted others because when we talk about being civil, when we talk about being respectful, we're actually showing a courtesy to the people that we're talking to. We're actually demonstrating a certain kind of attitude about who you are. And it's important in life for people to immediately understand what your character is all about. And how better to set the image of that character than to be mannerly and respectful and to understand those dynamics as if it's a part of your overall lifestyle. Now, in the age of technology, we're losing a lot of interpersonal abilities anymore. People are losing sight of actually how to interact with each other in a dignified way. I'm in a lot of airports going back and forth, and it is so embarrassing to me to see how people are so disrespectful on their cell phones. It is as if there is another appendage, another hand, part of their ear, and people are loud. I don't want to hear what other people have to say about what's going on with their kids and at their jobs. I don't want to hear it. And being loud about it, to me, is disrespectful. Computers. Now, how many times have you read in the newspaper somebody sent a bad email to somebody? They're talking about their boss, and they didn't forget to not copy their boss when they sent the email, when they pushed that send button. When you push the send button, you got to know absolutely what you've done. Because you can get in big trouble if you don't do that. So everybody knows about the balance scales, the balance of justice. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Well, it works as well with the subject that I'm talking about. It works with police officers. It works with judges. It works with correction staff. It works with probation officers and attorneys. We are not exempt from having to demonstrate a certain kind of behavior that will allow them to do their jobs in a very professional way. So, even in a correctional institution, a correction officer, and by the way, this charter school had this motto, be nice. You can do your jobs and be nice. You can do all the kind of things that your job requires, your position description requires, and do it in a way that does not cause disruption. And I've been in enough institutions and universities and places over the course of my career to know that this isn't always the case. I know that we can do a better job of making sure that the right thing happens. These words to me are the